The rain hammered against the bulletproof windows of Dominic Salvatore's penthouse office. Each drop a staccato beat that matched the tension coiling in his chest. He stood with his back to the door, studying the city lights below, a kingdom of glass and steel that he'd helped build, one careful investment and one calculated threat at a time. At 38, Dominic had learned that power wasn't taken. It was earned through blood, patience, and an unflinching willingness to do what others wouldn't. The knock came precisely at midnight, as his assistant had warned. 2 visitors, unannounced but expected, the Marchetti sisters. "Send them in," he said without turning, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had made him the most feared man in the eastern seaboard's underworld. The door opened with a whisper of expensive hinges. Dominic caught their reflection in the rain-streaked glass before he turned. 2 figures in designer coats, water droplets glistening in their hair like diamonds. The blonde and the redhead, legends in their own right, though he'd never had occasion to meet them personally. The Marchetti family operated in different circles, old money mixed with older violence, their territory carefully maintained along the waterfront where cargo ships brought in more than legal goods. He turned slowly, deliberately, letting them wait those few extra seconds. Psychological warfare began before the first word was spoken. The blonde stood slightly forward, her shoulders back despite the exhaustion etched around her eyes. Sophia Marchetti. Her reputation preceded her, ice-cold in negotiations, ruthless with traitors, capable of signing a death warrant with the same hand that hosted charity galas. Her hair fell in wet waves around her face, and her gray eyes assessed him with the calculating gaze of a woman who'd learned early that sentiment was a luxury her world couldn't afford. Behind her, the redhead shifted her weight, tension radiating from every line of her body. Isabella Marchetti, the younger sister by 2 years, though no less dangerous. Where Sophia was ice, Isabella was fire, quick to anger, quicker to act. Her green eyes burned with barely contained fury, and Dominic recognized the look. He'd warred himself once years ago, before he'd learned that rage was a tool best used sparingly. "Mr. Salvatore," Sophia began, her voice smooth despite the tremor he detected beneath. "Thank you for seeing us." "You didn't give me much choice," he replied, moving behind his desk, but remaining standing. "My assistant said it was urgent. Life or death," she said. "I don't respond well to dramatics." "It's not dramatics." Isabella's voice cut through the space between them, sharp as a blade. "It's fact." Dominic gestured to the chairs facing his desk. "Sit. Talk. You have 15 minutes before I decide whether this meeting was worth my time." They sat in synchronized movement, and he noticed details that spoke volumes. The designer clothes that couldn't quite hide weight loss, the expertly applied makeup that didn't fully conceal dark circles, the way Sophia's hand briefly touched Isabella's arm in a gesture of restraint. These were women under siege, trying desperately to maintain the appearance of control. "Our brother wants us dead," Sophia said without preamble, laying out as cleanly as a blade on velvet. "Marcello, he's been positioning himself for the past 6 months, turning our father's old guard against us, making alliances with families that have waited years for the Marchettis to show weakness. He plans to make it look like an accident. Separate accidents, probably. A car crash for me. Perhaps a robbery gone wrong for Isabella. Quick, clean, and leaving him as the sole heir to our territories." Dominic leaned back against his desk, crossing his arms. "Your family business is precisely that. Your family business. I'm not in the habit of intervening in succession disputes. They tend to be messy, and the smart money stays away." "The smart money," Isabella said, leaning forward with barely controlled intensity, "recognizes an opportunity when it presents itself. You help us eliminate Marcello, and we give you something you wanted for years. Access to the waterfront. Full partnership in our shipping operations. You control half the eastern seaboard's import operations overnight. It was a good offer. Better than good. It was exceptional." Dominic's operation had been hemmed in by the Marchetti waterfront monopoly for years, forcing him to work through intermediaries and pay fees that cut into his profit margins. Direct access would change everything, catapult his organization into a different tier of power. But nothing came without cost, and offers that seemed too good usually were. "Why me?" he asked, his voice deliberately neutral. You have your own people, your own resources. The Marchetti name alone commands respect. Why come to a rival organization for help? Sophia's laugh was bitter, stripped of all humor. Because everyone we trust is either bought by Marcelo or too afraid of him to act. Our father built his empire on fear and respect, but he's been dead 2 years, and Marcelo has spent that time systematically undermining everything we built. He's promised territory, money, power, all the things that make men forget their oaths. We need someone outside our immediate circle, someone who has no reason to betray us to Marcelo, because you already operate in opposition to our family. The enemy of my enemy, Dominic murmured. Something like that. Isabella's green eyes locked onto his, and he felt the full force of her personality. Wild, dangerous, desperate. We're not asking for charity, Salvatore. We're offering you the opportunity of a lifetime. Help us survive, and we'll make you the most powerful man on the East Coast. Refuse, and you'll watch as Marcelo consolidates power, and likely comes for your territories next. He's ambitious, our brother, and he won't stop with just a waterfront. Dominic studied them both in silence, weighing possibilities and probabilities. The truth was, they were right. Marcelo Marchetti was ambitious, and ambitious men were rarely content with what they had. If he eliminated his sisters and took control of their operations, he'd be emboldened, looking for the next conquest. Better to deal with the problem now, with allies who owed him a debt, than to face a stronger enemy later. But there was another calculation running through his mind, one he didn't fully want to acknowledge. These women, sitting in his office with rain in their hair and desperation in their eyes, were magnetic in a way that had nothing to do with business. Power recognized power, and despite their current predicament, the Marchetti sisters radiated it. Sophia's cold calculation, Isabella's fierce determination, both spoke to something primal in him, something he long kept locked away in service of building his empire. Dangerous thoughts. Distracting thoughts. Tell me about Marcelo's setup, he said, making his decision without fully announcing it. His security, his schedule, where he's vulnerable. If I'm going to consider this, I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Relief flooded both their faces, quickly masked but unmistakable. Sophia pulled out a leather folder from her bag, spreading documents across his desk with practiced efficiency. Floor plans, security rotations, financial records, even photographs of key personnel. He operates out of the old family estate in Westchester. Sophia began, her finger tracing routes on a blueprint. 20-acre compound, 8 guards on rotation, plus personal security that travels with him. He's paranoid but predictable. Same routes, same routines, same overconfidence that comes from thinking he's already won. Isabella leaned in, adding details, and Dominic found himself drawn into the planning despite his usual caution. They worked through scenarios, discussed approaches, identified weaknesses in Marcelo's operation. The sisters were thorough, knowledgeable, and surprisingly strategic. They'd done their homework, mapped out possibilities before ever walking into his office. Hours passed. The rain continued its assault on the windows. Coffee appeared at some point, brought by his assistant, who knew better than to comment on the extended meeting. Dominic watched the sisters interact, the silent communication between them, the way Sophia's restraint balanced Isabella's passion, how they function as a single unit despite their different approaches. There's a gala next month, Sophia said finally, sitting back with evident fatigue. Charity event for the Children's Hospital. All the major families attend. Neutral ground, tradition going back decades. Marcelo will be there, making his political moves, solidify alliances. If something were to happen to him there, or on his way home. Too public. Dominic cut her off. You want this to look like it could have happened anyway, not like a targeted hit. A gala killing brings down attention you can't afford. Starts a war that burns everyone. No, it needs to be quieter. More subtle. His mistress, Isabella said suddenly, a cruel smile curving her lips. Marcelo has a mistress he visits every Tuesday night. A penthouse in the city, low security because he thinks it's secret. It's not, we've known for months. But he feels safe there, lets his guard down. Now that had possibilities. Dominic pulled up a mental map of the city, calculating distances, access points, escape routes. A penthouse meant limited entry, but also limited escape. If they moved carefully, it could work. I'll need time to verify the information, set up my own surveillance, he said. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Nothing moves until I'm satisfied the approach is sound. Agreed, Sophia said immediately. But time is something we might not have much of. Marcelo's been making unusual moves lately, consolidating assets. We think he's planning to act soon. Then we'll work quickly. Dominic stood, signaling the meeting's end. But we do this right, or we don't do it at all. Sloppy gets people killed, usually the wrong people. My assistant will arrange secure communication. Don't contact me directly until this is resolved. We can't risk anyone connecting us before Marcelo is handled. They rose as well, and for a moment, the three of them stood there in the pre-dawn darkness, the city slowly awakening beyond the windows. An unspoken agreement hung between them, sealed not with handshakes, but with shared understanding of what came next. Sophia moved first, extending her hand. Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. You won't regret this. Her grip was firm, professional, but when Dominic's hand closed around hers, he felt an electric current run through the contact. Her eyes widened fractionally. She felt it too. The moment stretched a heartbeat too long before they broke apart. Isabella offered her hand next, and again that spark, that recognition of something beyond business. Her green eyes searched his face, and he saw questions there she wouldn't ask. Not yet, not with so much unresolved between their families. We'll be in touch, he said, voice rougher than intended. They left as they'd arrived, 2 shadows disappearing into the dying night. Dominic remained at the window long after they'd gone, watching dawn break over his city, wondering what exactly he'd agreed to. The business partnership made sense. It was a smart play, the strategic move that would elevate his position dramatically. But the way his pulse had quickened when Sophia had looked at him with those calculating gray eyes, the way Isabella's fierce intensity had drawn him like a moth to flame, that wasn't strategy. That was something far more dangerous, something he'd spent years avoiding, because emotions were weaknesses to be exploited in his world. He poured himself a drink despite the early hour, the amber liquid burning down his throat like absolution. This was going to get complicated. He could feel it in his bones, the same instinct that had kept him alive through 2 decades in this business. The Marchetti sisters were going to be more than business partners, and complicated, in his experience, usually ended in blood. The next 2 weeks unfolded with careful precision. Dominic put his best people on surveillance, watching Marcelo's movements, confirming what the sisters had told him. Everything checked out: the mistress, the Tuesday visits, the reduced security. Marcelo was confident, perhaps overconfident, in his secrecy. Sophia and Isabella communicated through the secure channels he'd established, providing additional intelligence, answering questions, remaining patient while he built the framework for their plan. They were good at this, he realized, better than many men he'd worked with. They understood that violence was a tool that required precision, not a first resort for every problem. The first face-to-face meeting after that initial night came 17 days later, in a different location. A warehouse Dominic owned on the edge of the city, technically abandoned but maintained for exactly these kinds of purposes. He arrived first, as was his habit, checking sightlines and exits before they showed. They arrived together again, though this time in separate cars, a small but significant security detail. Learning, adapting. Good. The surveillance confirms your intelligence, Dominic said without preamble, spreading photographs across a makeshift table. Marcelo visits a penthouse every Tuesday between 9 and midnight. 2 guards accompany him, both standing post in the hallway. The building has decent security, but nothing that can't be bypassed. The mistress is a civilian, no connections, no training. Collateral damage waiting to happen. So we minimize it, Sophia said, studying the photos with professional detachment. The girl doesn't need to die. She's not part of this. Isabella made a sound that might have been disagreement, but a look from her sister silenced it. Interesting dynamics there, Dominic noted. Sophia was clearly the strategic mind, but Isabella's instincts for direct action kept them balanced. My concern is the aftermath, he continued. You kill Marcelo, even quietly, and there will be questions, investigations from both the police and the families. You need to control the narrative immediately, or this falls apart. We've thought about that, Isabella said, pulling out her own set of documents. Marcelo's been embezzling from family accounts for months. We have the paper trail. We released that information immediately after his death. Make it look like he crossed the wrong people. It explains the hit, directs attention away from family politics. Clever. Dominic felt a grudging respect growing for their planning. They weren't just reactive. They thought several moves ahead. There's something else, Sophia said, and her tone made him look up sharply. We need to discuss the actual execution. Who pulls the trigger? My people, Dominic said immediately. It's cleaner that way. Less connection to you. No. Isabella's voice was flat, final. This is our problem. Our brother. We don't hide behind hired guns. One of us pulls the trigger, or the deal is off. Dominic studied her, seeing the steel beneath the fire. This was personal for her, not just business. Probably personal for both of them, though Sophia hit it better. That's a mistake, he said carefully. Emotional involvement leads to errors. Better keep distance, maintain deniability. This is non-negotiable. Sophia backed her sister's play, presenting a united front. We need to know it's done, need to be certain. Trust is a commodity we can't afford right now, even with you. No offense intended. None taken. He understood the reasoning, even if he disagreed with the approach. Then one of you comes with my team, acts as trigger with oversight. We control the environment, but you take the shot. Compromise. They exchanged glances, that silent communication again. Finally, both nodded. I'll do it, Isabella said. This is my expertise anyway. Planning continued into the night. Details refined until they had something approaching a workable operation. Dominic found himself impressed despite his reservations. The sisters had minds for this work, the kind of tactical thinking that usually took years to develop. They'd been raised in this world, shaped by it, and they wore that shaping with dark grace. Sophia left first, citing a meeting she couldn't miss. Isabella lingered, ostensibly to review final details, but Dominic sensed something else beneath the surface. You think we're in over our heads, she said when they were alone. Not quite a question. I think you're doing what you have to do to survive, he replied honestly. Whether that's the same thing depends on execution and luck. Not necessarily in that order. She laughed, sharp and genuine. You know what I like about you, Salvatore? You don't bullshit. Everyone else in our world dresses up violence in pretty words, pretends it's honor or family or tradition. You just acknowledge it for what it is, necessary evil. Evil is a strong word. I prefer practical. Same thing, different packaging. She moved closer, and he became acutely aware of the space between them or lack thereof. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I might not answer. Why did you really agree to help us? And don't say the waterfront access. That's part of it, sure, but not all. I can tell. Dominic considered lying, deflecting. It would be easier. But something about Isabella's directness deserved honesty in return. Because I see what comes next if Marcelo wins, he said. An emboldened enemy and two interesting people dead before their time. The strategic play aligned with, let's call it personal interest. I don't mourn deaths in this business often, but I would have regretted yours. The air between them changed, charged with recognition of something neither was quite ready to name. Isabella's eyes searched his face, and he let her look, let her see whatever she needed to see. Sophia thinks you're dangerous, she said softly. Not in the obvious way. We're all dangerous. But dangerous to us specifically. To our focus, our mission. She's probably right. And what do you think? I think dangerous might be exactly what we need right now. Safe got us hunted by our own brother. Maybe it's time to embrace the chaos. She left before he could respond, and Dominic stood in the empty warehouse, wondering what exactly he'd gotten himself into. The plan to eliminate Marcelo was straightforward enough. He'd orchestrated more complex operations before. But the undercurrents running beneath the surface, the attraction he felt to both sisters in different ways, the way they'd invade his thoughts at odd moments, that was the real danger. He'd built his empire on discipline and distance, never letting personal feelings compromise professional judgment. Now he was walking a razor's edge, and the fall on either side promised to be spectacular. The third meeting happened by accident, or what passed for accident in their carefully orchestrated world. Dominic had business at an art gallery opening. Laundering money through art sales was a time-honored tradition, and maintaining his legitimate business persona required these social appearances. He hadn't expected to see Sophia there, elegant in black silk, moving through the crowd with practiced grace. Their eyes met across the gallery, and something passed between them. Recognition, awareness, inevitability. She excused herself from her conversation and drifted toward him with the kind of casual precision that fooled everyone watching into thinking it was coincidence. "Mr. Salvatore," she said, voice pitched for public consumption, "I didn't expect to see you here. Are you a patron of the arts?" "Among other things," he replied, playing along. "And you, Ms. Marchetti? I wouldn't have thought contemporary installations were your style." "I'm full of surprises." Her gray eyes held his, and beneath the public pleasantries, he read a different message entirely. "Perhaps we could discuss the Martinez piece? I'd value your perspective." They moved together toward an abstract sculpture in a quieter corner of the gallery, far enough from other guests to speak with some privacy, close enough to maintain appearances. "Isabella's getting impatient," Sophia said quietly, studying the sculpture as if discussing its merits. "She wants to move up the timeline. The timeline is what it is for a reason. Rush this, and people die, possibly the wrong people." "I know. I've told her the same thing. But she's—" Sophia paused, choosing words carefully. "This situation with Marcello is affecting her differently than me. Our father always favored him, always made clear that daughters were temporary placeholders until the son could take his rightful place. Isabella took that rejection harder. This isn't just survival for her. It's proving something to a dead man who never valued her." Dominic heard the pain beneath Sophia's controlled exterior, the wound that never quite healed. "And for you? For me, it's exactly what I told you, survival and strategy. I made peace with our father's limitations years ago. But Isabella—" She trailed off, vulnerability flickering across her features before she locked it down. "I need to know she'll be safe during the operation. Whatever happens to me, Isabella has to survive this." "You'll both survive," Dominic said with more conviction than he felt. "That's the plan. Plans change. Situations evolve. Promise me that if something goes wrong, you'll protect her, not for the business arrangement. That can go to hell, but because she deserves a life beyond this violence, beyond our father's poisonous legacy." He looked at Sophia fully then, seeing past the Ice Queen facade to the woman beneath. Someone who'd spent her entire life protecting her younger sister, who'd shaped herself into a weapon so Isabella wouldn't have to bear the weight alone. It was devotion of a different kind, love expressed through ruthless efficiency. "I promise," he said and meant it. "But that protection extends to you as well. Neither of you are disposable assets in this arrangement. Sophia, remember that." She smiled then, genuine warmth breaking through her careful control. "You're a dangerous man, Dominic Salvatore. My sister was right about that." The use of his first name felt significant, intimate, a barrier crossing the space between one heartbeat and the next. Before he could respond, she'd already turned away, gliding back in the crowd as if their conversation had been nothing more than art appreciation. Dominic remained by the sculpture, processing what had just occurred, the promise he'd made, the way his pulse had accelerated when Sophia had smiled at him. These were complications he couldn't afford. Yet he couldn't quite bring himself to regret them either. The operation moved forward with mechanical precision. Isabella proved herself capable during tactical rehearsals, her instincts sharp, her nerves steady. Dominic's team integrated her into their planning. And to their credit, his men treated her with professional respect rather than skepticism. The Marchetti name carried weight, and Isabella had clearly earned her reputation. But it was Sophia who occupied Dominic's thoughts during those final days before the hit. She'd sent a message through their secure channel, a simple request to meet, nothing more. He'd agreed without quite understanding why. Selecting a restaurant he owned, closed to the public for the evening under the pretense of a private event. She arrived alone, no security visible though he knew they were there, watching from a distance. She'd traded her business armor for something softer, a dress that suggested vulnerability even as her bearing remained controlled. It was deliberate, he realized. Sophia Marchetti did nothing without calculation. They sat across from each other. As servers brought food neither of them would eat, wine that would go largely untouched. The pretense of dinner, when what they were really doing was something far more dangerous, acknowledging the attraction that had simmered beneath every interaction. "This is probably a mistake," Sophia said without preamble. "Getting involved with you, even considering it. The smart play is to maintain professional distance until Marcello is handled and our territories are secured." "Probably," Dominic agreed. "So why are we here?" "Because I've spent my entire life making smart plays, and I'm tired." She laughed, bitter and beautiful. "Do you know what it's like living every moment as a calculated risk? Never allow yourself to want something just because you want it, always weighing consequences and potential blowback? I look at Isabella sometimes, and I envy her. She feels things fully, acts on instinct. I've forgotten how to do that." "You haven't forgotten. You just learned to control it, which is different. That control has kept you alive in a world that eats people like us." Dominic leaned forward, drawn by her honesty. "But you're right. This is complicated. We're allies out of necessity, partners in eliminating a threat. Adding anything else to that equation creates variables neither of us can fully predict. And yet here we are." "Here we are," he echoed. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Dominic thought about discipline, about the rules he'd established for himself years ago. No emotional entanglements, no vulnerabilities that could be exploited, no distractions from the empire he'd built through careful calculation and controlled violence. Then Sophia stood, moving around the table with liquid grace, and all those carefully constructed rules seemed suddenly irrelevant. She stopped beside his chair, close enough that he could smell her perfume, see the pulse beating in her throat. This close, her control wavered, revealing the woman beneath the armor. Someone as drawn to him as he was to her, fighting the same battle against pragmatism. "Tell me this is a mistake," she said quietly. "Convince me to walk away. Maintain the distance we should keep, because I can't seem to convince myself." Dominic stood, eliminating even that small distance between them. He could feel the heat of her body, see the way her breath had quickened despite her controlled exterior. One word from him and she'd leave, lock this moment away and focus solely on survival. It was what they both should do. "I can't," he admitted, "because I'd be lying, and we've been honest with each other from the start. This is a mistake, Sophia. It's going to complicate everything, probably end in pain for both of us. But I'm tired too, tired of living a life where every decision is calculated for maximum advantage, where nothing is allowed just because I want it." She closed the remaining distance, her hands coming up to frame his face, and when she kissed him, it felt like falling and flying simultaneously. Dominic had kissed women before, countless encounters that meant nothing beyond momentary pleasure. This was different. Sophia kissed him like she was claiming something, like she finally allowed herself to want without permission. He pulled her closer, one hand sliding into her blonde hair while the other settled at the small of her back, and lost himself in the taste of her. She made a sound low in her throat, somewhere between surrender and victory, and Dominic felt something fundamental shift in his carefully ordered world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, Sophia rested her forehead against his chest. "This changes nothing about the plan," she said, though her voice wavered. "Marcello still dies. We still secure our territories. This doesn't make me weak." "I know." He pressed a kiss to her hair, breathing in the scent of her. "You could never be weak, Sophia. That's part of what drew me to you, recognizing someone who understands power the same way I do." She pulled back to look at him, and in her gray eyes he saw a reflection of his own complexity, desire warring with pragmatism, emotion battling against decades of learned control. They stood at a crossroads, and both knew that the choice they made now would echo through everything that followed. "Stay," Dominic said, making the decision for both of them. "Tonight, let's pretend we're people who can afford this. Tomorrow, we go back to being who we have to be. But tonight, we're just Sophia and Dominic." she finished. No families, no territories, no blood on our hands. It was a beautiful fiction, and they both knew it. There was no escaping who they were, what they'd done, what they would do. But for one night, they could pretend, could explore this connection without weighing every consequence. They moved to the private rooms above the restaurant. Spaces Dominic maintained for exactly these purposes, though he'd never brought anyone here who mattered. Sophia mattered. That was the truth he couldn't escape, even as he knew how dangerous it was to care about someone in their world. They talked through the night, sharing pieces of themselves they kept locked away. Dominic told her about his childhood in Brooklyn, the father who'd beaten ambition into him with fists and words, the moment he'd realized that fear could be transformed into power. Sophia spoke of her mother's death when she was 12, how she'd become Isabella's protector by necessity, shaped herself into someone her father couldn't dismiss even as he never quite accepted her. They discovered similarities in their scars, parallel paths through darkness that had led them to this moment. And when talking gave way to touching, when Sophia's dress pulled on the floor and Dominic's careful control finally shattered, it felt like something more than physical need. It felt like recognition of two people who've been alone their entire lives, finding unexpected solace in each other. Afterward, Sophia lay with her head on his chest, tracing patterns against the skin in the dim light. Isabella's going to know, she said quietly. She always knows when I'm hiding something. She'll figure out we're involved. And that's a problem? I don't know yet. Sophia's fingers stilled. She's protective of me, in her way. Might see you as a threat, or might see you as exactly what I need. Isabella's instincts are usually good, but she's unpredictable. She cares about you. That's not unpredictable. It's one of the few certain things in our uncertain world. Sophia shifted to look at him, and something in her expression made his breath catch. Do you think about what comes after? After Marcello is dead, after our territories are secure? What this, she gestured between them, becomes? I think about it, Dominic admitted. Don't have answers yet, but I think about it. We're building something here. Sophia, not just a business alliance, but this. And I don't know if our world allows for what I'm starting to want. What are you starting to want? He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. More than I should. More than is probably wise. But I've never been good at denying myself something once I've decided I want it. She smiled against the skin. We're going to burn, aren't we? Both of us. Probably Isabella, too. This kind of wanting in our world. It's gasoline on an open flame. Probably. But what a way to go. They fell silent then, holding each other as dawn approached, both aware that this stolen night would have consequences they couldn't fully predict. But neither pulled away, neither retreated back to safety. They'd crossed a line together, and there was no uncrossing it. Isabella found out within 48 hours, exactly as Sophia had predicted. She arrived at Dominic's office unannounced, bypassing his assistant with the kind of determination that suggested violence was a very real possibility. Dominic dismissed his people with a gesture, facing the redhead alone. You're sleeping with my sister, Isabella said without preamble, green eyes blazing. Don't bother denying it. I can see on her face. The way she moves differently, talks about you differently. So let's skip the part where you lie and get to the part where you explain what the hell you're thinking. Dominic met her fury with calm. Your sister is a grown woman capable of making her own choices. What's between us doesn't affect the operation. Everything affects the operation. Isabella slammed her hand on his desk. We're 3 days out from killing our brother, and you're compromising her judgment by getting in her head. Sophia thinks with perfect clarity. It's what keeps us alive. You're making her messy, emotional, distracted. Or maybe, Dominic said carefully, she's allowing herself to feel something for the first time in years. That's not weakness, Isabella. That's being human. Being human gets you killed in our world. Isabella's voice dropped to something dangerous. I've watched Sophia sacrifice everything to keep us alive. Her relationships, her happiness, any chance at a normal life. She turned herself into ice because that's what survival required. And now you come along, making her think she can have something more, and it's going to get her killed. Dominic heard the fear beneath Isabella's anger, the terror of losing the one person who'd always protected her, who'd stood between her and their father's cruelty. "I'm not going to let anything happen to her," he said. "That's a promise. Promises don't stop bullets. Strategy does, preparation does, cold calculation does. Not whatever romantic fantasy you two have cooked up." Isabella turned away, shoulders tight with tension. "You want to know why I'm really angry? It's not because you're sleeping with her. It's because I see how she looks at you and I recognize it. She's falling for you, Dominic. Really falling, in a way that's going to shatter her if this goes wrong. Then we make sure it doesn't go wrong. And what about after?" Isabella spun back to face him. "After Marcelo is dead and we're supposed to be equal partners in business? You think the families will accept their territories being managed by your lover? They'll see her as compromised, weak, controlled by you. Everything she's worked for, gone because she couldn't keep business and pleasure separate." It was a valid concern, one Dominic had considered in the dark hours when Sophia slept beside him. Their world didn't forgive emotional attachments, saw them as vulnerabilities to exploit. But he'd also seen the way Sophia's eyes lit up when she let herself be happy, the way years of tension melted from her shoulders when she allowed herself to want something beyond survival. "What do you want from me, Isabella?" To walk away, pretend nothing happened. "I want you to be worth it," she said, and her voice cracked slightly. "If Sophia is going to risk everything for you, I need to know you're worth the cost. Because if you're not, if you hurt her or get her killed with your distraction, I will dedicate my life to destroying everything you've built. That's not a threat, it's a promise." Dominic nodded slowly. "I understand. And for what it's worth, I don't take what's between us lightly. Your sister means," he paused, surprised by the emotion that rose in his throat. "She means more than I expected, more than I thought I could feel." Isabella studied him with those sharp green eyes, reading truth beneath his words. Finally, she sighed, some of the fight draining from her posture. "She sent me here, you know, not directly, but she knew I'd figure out, knew I'd come confront you. This was her way of testing, whether you'd stand up to family pressure, whether you'd defend what's between you, or fold at the first sign of conflict. And did I pass the test? Maybe. Or maybe you're just good at saying what people want to hear." Isabella moved toward the door, then paused. "There's something else you should know. About the operation, about me." "What?" "I volunteer to pull the trigger because it needs to be me. I need to be the one who ends Marcelo. But also because if something goes wrong, if this turns into a firefight, Sophia won't hesitate to put herself between me and danger. She always has. So when we go in there, when we execute this plan, you need to be ready to protect her from herself. Because she'll die for me without a second thought, and I can't." Her voice broke completely. "I can't lose her, Dominic. She's all I have left that's real in this world." The vulnerability in that admission hit him harder than any threat could have. Isabella Marchetti, fierce and wild, terrified of losing her sister. It reminded him that beneath the violence and strategy, they were all just people trying to protect the few things they loved in a world designed to take everything. "I'll protect her," he said quietly. "And you?" "That's not just strategy talking. That's a vow." Isabella nodded once, then left without another word. Dominic stood alone in his office, feeling the weight of promises he'd made, understanding that he'd committed himself to something far more complex than a business arrangement. His phone buzzed. A message from Sophia. "I assume Isabella paid you a visit. Sorry about that. She's protective." He typed back, "She loves you. Nothing to apologize for." A pause and, "Do you love me? I mean, or is this still just complicated attraction?" Dominic stared at the question, knowing his answer would change everything. He could lie, maintain emotional distance, keep this safely in the realm of physical need. Or he could tell the truth, admit something he hadn't fully acknowledged to himself. "I don't know yet," he typed, "but I'm starting to. That terrifies me more than anything we're about to do." Her response came quickly. "Good. I'd hate to be terrified alone." The night of the operation arrived with unnatural stillness, as if the city itself held its breath. Dominic's team assembled with professional efficiency, for men he'd worked with for years, loyal beyond question, skilled at making problems disappear. Isabella arrived in tactical black, her red hair pulled back, face set with grim determination. Sophia came separately, as planned, maintaining the fiction of distance even as her eyes found Dominic's across the warehouse. "Everyone knows their role," Dominic said, addressing the team. "This is surgical. We go in quiet," handled Marcelo, "and leave no trace we were ever there. The building security is compromised for the next 90 minutes. Isabella takes point once we're inside. My people provide backup and extraction." Questions? No one spoke. These were professionals who'd done this dance before, who understood that words were wasted on operations where everything depended on execution. They moved out in separate vehicles, converging on the target from different directions. The penthouse building rose above them, glass and steel reaching toward an indifferent sky. Somewhere inside, Marcello Marchetti was with his mistress, unaware that his sisters had finally stopped running and started fighting back. The infiltration went smoothly. Security feeds looped, alarm systems bypassed, service elevator overridden with codes that had cost considerable resources to acquire. They rode up in tense silence, Isabella checking her weapon with hands that didn't quite shake, Dominic watching her while simultaneously tracking everyone's positions through his earpiece. Sophia's voice came through, distant monitoring from their command position. "Guards just changed shift. You have a clean window for the next 20 minutes. They exited on Marcello's floor, moving down hallways empty of witnesses. The 2 guards outside the penthouse door were dispatched with quick efficiency. Tranquilizer darts, not bullets, minimizing noise and evidence. They'd wake in a few hours with no memory of what happened. Chemical amnesia courtesy of Dominic's connections. Isabella stepped forward, picking the lock with practiced ease. The door swung open silently, revealing a darkened living room and beyond, the glow of bedroom lights. They could hear voices, Marcello's laugh, a woman's giggle, domestic sound that seemed surreal given what came next. "Stay here," Isabella whispered to the team, her voice cold as winter. "This part is mine." She moved through the apartment like a ghost, and Dominic followed despite his order to wait, unwilling to let her face this alone. They paused outside the bedroom door, and he saw Isabella's hand tighten on her weapon, saw her take one deep breath and then another, steeling herself for fratricide. "You don't have to," he started, but she cut him off with a look. "Yes, I do. For Sophia. For me. For every time he called us decorative assets. Every moment he made us feel less than him just because we were born female. I have to be the one." She pushed through the door, weapon raised, and Marcello's face went from confusion to terror in the space of a heartbeat. The woman screamed, scrambling away, and Isabella's gun tracked her briefly before returning to her brother. "Isabella?" Marcello's voice shook. "What are you?" "You know what this is," Isabella interrupted, voice steady despite the emotion Dominic could see raging beneath her surface. "You've been planning our deaths for months. Did you really think we wouldn't figure it out? That we'd just wait quietly for you to eliminate us?" Marcello's eyes darted toward Dominic, standing in the doorway. "Salvatore, so you've joined forces with my sisters. How predictable. Did they promise you the waterfront? Whatever they offered, I'll double it, triple it. Just walk away." "Not interested," Dominic said flatly. "This is family, business." Marcello tried again, sweat beading on his forehead. "Stay out of it, and—" "I am family business," Dominic interrupted. "Or I will be, once your sisters inherit everything you've tried to steal from them." "See, that's your mistake, Marcello. You saw them as obstacles to remove, while I saw them as assets to cultivate. In our world, that kind of blindness gets you killed." Isabella's finger tightened on the trigger, and Dominic saw her war with herself. The need for vengeance against the weight of what killing her brother meant, the finality of that choice. Despite everything Marcello had done, this was still blood killing blood, and that mark never truly washed away. "Bella, wait!" Sophia's voice crackled through the earpiece. "Something's wrong. We're seeing movement on the street, vehicles that don't belong. Multiple contacts approaching the building." Dominic's blood went cold. "How many?" "At least 6 cars. Armed men. Looks like—" Sophia's voice cut off, replaced by the sound of gunfire. Distant but unmistakable. "It's a trap. Marcello has backup. He knew we were coming." Everything happened at once. Marcelo lunged for a weapon hidden in the nightstand. The mistress continued screaming, and Isabella fired without thinking. 3-shot center mass, professional grouping that dropped her brother before he could reach his gun. The mistress's screaming intensified into hysterics, and Dominic grabbed Isabella's arm. "Move! Now!" They ran back through the apartment, rejoining the team in the hallway. Already they could hear footsteps on the stairs. Too many, coming too fast. Marcelo had set his own trap, luring them in while his forces moved into position. Elevators are compromised. Sophia's voice came through again, strained with stress. "They're cutting off escape routes. You need to go up. Rooftop extraction is your only option." "Going up," Dominic confirmed, already directing his team toward the stairwell access. They moved fast, abandoning stealth for speed. Isabella keeping pace despite the shock Dominic could see settling over her features. She just killed her brother, and there was no time to process, no moment to feel, only survival. Gunfire erupted behind them. Marcelo's men had reached their floor, were pursuing. One of Dominic's men returned fire, buying them seconds that felt like hours. They burst through the rooftop door into cold night air, and Dominic scanned for options. "Where's the extraction?" Isabella demanded, voice sharp with adrenaline. "Coming," Sophia said. "Helicopter 2 minutes out." "But Dominic, there's something else." Marcelo had contingencies. "Police are being called to this location. Emergency services." He set it up so if he died, you'd all be caught in a net you can't escape. He planned to take you down with him. Clever bastard. Even dying, Marcelo had ensured chaos. Dominic made rapid calculations. Police response time, helicopter arrival, the men pursuing him up the stairs. The math was bad, getting worse by the second. "We need to split up," he said quickly. "Isabella, you come with me in the helicopter. My team disperses on foot. They know the city, know how to vanish. We regroup after things cool down." "What about Sophia?" Isabella's eyes were wild. "She's exposed to the command position. If Marcelo's people know about her..." "I'm fine," Sophia cut in, already moving to a safe location. "Focus on getting out alive." The helicopter appeared over the skyline, running dark. Pilot one of Dominic's most trusted people. It swooped toward the rooftop as footsteps thundered up the stairwell. Seconds left, maybe less. Dominic's team laid down covering fire as the helicopter touched down, rotors whipping wind into a frenzy. "Go!" Dominic shouted, pushing Isabella toward the aircraft. She hesitated, looking back at the doorway where enemies would emerge any moment. "Isabella, move!" She ran, and Dominic followed, diving into the helicopter just as Marcelo's men burst onto the rooftop. Bullets sparked off metal as they lifted away, and Dominic pulled Isabella down, covering her with his body as the pilot pushed the aircraft into a steep climb. They rose above the city, leaving chaos below, and for a moment there was only the thunder of rotors and harsh breathing. Then Isabella pushed him off, eyes blazing with fury and fear and grief all mixed together. "Sophia," she said, voice breaking. "We need to confirm she's safe." Dominic tried the earpiece, but got only static. Either Sophia had ditched it for security reasons, or something had gone wrong. His stomach clenched with fear he couldn't quite suppress. "She's smart," he said, trying to convince himself as much as Isabella. "She knows how to disappear. We'll hear from her when it's safe." But an hour passed with no word. Then, too, the helicopter dropped them at a safe house in Connecticut, a property held under so many shell companies that even determined investigation would take weeks to trace. Dominic's team checked in one by one, all accounted for, all safe, but Sophia remained silent. Isabella paced the safe house like a caged animal, her earlier shock giving way to mounting panic. She would have contacted us by now. Something's wrong. Dominic tried to secure channels again, leaving messages that went unanswered. He reached out to his network, asking carefully disguised questions about activity around Sophia's last known location. Nothing. It was as if she'd simply vanished. "Maybe she's being extra cautious," he said, knowing it sounded weak. Marcelo had informants everywhere. She might be worried about compromised communications. Or she's captured. Or dead. Isabella's voice cracked. This is what I was afraid of. She got distracted, let her guard down, and now... Don't, Dominic said sharply. Don't assume the worst. Sophia is too careful, too skilled. If she's gone dark, there's a reason. But as dawn broke over the safe house and still no word came, doubt crept in. Had they been outmaneuvered? Had Marcello's contingencies been more elaborate than they'd anticipated? The operation should have been clean. In and out, problem solved. Instead, it had turned into a bloodbath with Sophia missing and their entire arrangement potentially compromised. Dominic's phone finally rang around 8 a.m., an unknown number. He answered cautiously, "Yes?" Mr. Salvatore. The voice was male, unfamiliar, carrying the weight of authority. "My name is Vincent Torres. I represent certain interests of the late Marcello Marchetti. I believe we should talk about your situation." Every instinct screamed trap, but Dominic kept his voice level. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course not, which is why you want to hear what I have to say regarding Sophia Marchetti. She's currently my guest, and while she's being treated well, I imagine both you and her sister would prefer her return. Shall we discuss terms?" Isabella had moved close enough to hear, her face going white. Dominic met her eyes and saw his own fear reflected back. Sophia was alive, but captured. Leverage in a game they hadn't known they were playing. "What do you want?" Dominic asked. "A meeting. Just you and Isabella, unarmed, at a location of my choosing. We discussed the future of Marchetti territories and your unfortunate involvement in last night's events. If we reach an understanding, Sophia goes free. If not..." Torres let the threat hang. "You have 2 hours to decide. I'll send coordinates." The line went dead. Isabella looked at Dominic with raw desperation. "It's a trap. He'll kill us all." "Probably," Dominic agreed. "But we're going anyway, because the alternative is leaving Sophia in enemy hands. And that's not an option. We need a plan. Backup. Something more than just walking into an obvious ambush." Dominic was already making calls, activating resources, positioning people. 2 hours wasn't much time, but he'd worked with less. The key was making Torres think they were complying while actually preparing for war. "We're going to get her back," he told Isabella with more confidence than he felt. "Whatever it takes, we're bringing Sophia home." Isabella nodded, and in that moment, they weren't rivals or uneasy allies. They were two people united by caring for the same woman, willing to risk everything to save her. It was a kind of bond forged in crisis, the recognition that some things mattered more than self-preservation. The coordinates led to an abandoned shipyard on the waterfront, appropriately symbolic, given what they'd been fighting over. Dominic and Isabella arrived in separate vehicles, as instructed, parking in the designated area. The place felt wrong. Too quiet, the kind of location where bodies disappeared and were never found. A man emerged from one of the warehouses. Torres, presumably flanked by armed guards. He was older, maybe 60, with the kind of face that had seen violence and learned to enjoy it. Behind him, held between two more guards, was Sophia. She looked unharmed but exhausted, her clothes dirty, bruises forming on her wrists where zip ties had been too tight. When her eyes found Dominic and Isabella, relief and warning warred in her expression. Relief they'd come, warning that this was worse than it looked. "Ms. Marchetti, Mr. Salvatore," Torres said genially, "thank you for accepting my invitation. I think we have much to discuss about the future." "Let her go," Isabella said flatly. "Then we'll talk." "I don't think so. See, Sophia here is my insurance that you'll listen to my proposal rather than doing something rash, like killing me, the way you kill Marcello." Torres smiled. "Yes, I know about that. Marcello was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. He knew his sisters might move against him, took precautions. I was one of those precautions, a contingency plan, you might say." "What do you want?" Dominic asked, keeping his voice neutral, while his mind raced through tactical options. Torres had at least 8 men visible, probably more hidden. Direct assault would get them all killed. They needed another approach. Simple. I want what Marcello promised me, partnership in the Marchetti waterfront operations. With him dead, that means partner with you ladies. And since you're now aligned with Salvatore here, that means partnering with his organization as well. We split the territories 3 ways. Everyone profits, and we forget last night's unpleasantness ever happened. And if we refuse... Isabella's hand was inching toward her jacket, where Dominic knew she'd hidden a weapon despite instructions. Then Sophia dies, and I release evidence of your involvement in Marcello's death to the police and to the families. You'll be hunted by law enforcement and marked for death by every organization on the East Coast. I don't think you want that. Torres gestured, and one of his men pressed a gun to Sophia's temple. So let's all be reasonable adults and discuss terms. Sophia's eyes met Dominic's, and in that gaze he saw something that made his heart stop: resignation. She'd accepted that she might die here, had made peace with it. But beneath that acceptance was a message. Don't let Isabella do anything stupid. We need time to consider, Dominic said, stalling while his mind worked through scenarios. He had people positioned around the perimeter, waiting for his signal. But they needed Torres and his men more concentrated, needed better sight lines. Every second he bought was a second his team could get into position. You have 5 minutes, Torres said. Use them wisely. Those 5 minutes stretched into eternity. Dominic and Isabella moved apart slightly, ostensibly to discuss privately, actually creating angles his snipers could use. Isabella's jaw was tight, and he could see her calculating the same odds he was. The likelihood any of them walked away if this turned violent. I can't let her die, Isabella whispered. She's all I have, Dominic. I can't. She won't, he promised. Trust me. Just be ready to move when I give the signal. But before he could execute his plan, Sophia moved. She'd been quietly working at her restraints, using some technique that had loosened the zip ties enough to slip one hand free. In a fluid motion, she grabbed the gun pressed to her head, twisted away from her temple, and drove her elbow back into her captor's solar plexus. Chaos erupted. Dominic's snipers took advantage of the distraction, shots ringing out from concealed positions. Torres's men returned fire, and suddenly the shipyard was a war zone. Dominic drew his own weapon, putting down 2 guards while advancing toward Sophia. Isabella was moving too, firing with deadly accuracy. Clearing a path, Torres tried to run, shouting orders, but Sophia was on him. She'd gotten a guard's gun and was moving like a woman possessed, rage and fear transformed into lethal precision. She caught Torres before he reached cover, her weapon pressed against his spine. Call them off, she said, voice cold enough to freeze blood. Or you die right here. Torres assessed the situation. Half his men down, the rest pinned by sniper fire, no escape route available. He raised his hand slowly. Stand down, he shouted to his remaining people. Weapons down. The shooting stopped, leaving only ringing ears and the smell of gunpowder. Dominic reached Sophia, pulling her into his arms while keeping his weapon trained on Torres. She was shaking, adrenaline crash hitting hard, but her grip on the gun never wavered. You okay? He murmured against her hair. Better now, she said, then pulled away to look at Isabella, who'd fought her way to their position. Both of you came for me. Did you really think we wouldn't? Isabella's voice broke as she grabbed her sister in a fierce embrace. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever make me think I lost you. I'm sorry, Sophia whispered. I'm sorry. The sisters held each other while Dominic secured Torres and his remaining men, zip-tying them with the same restraints they'd used on Sophia. His team emerged from their positions, professional and efficient in cleaning up the mess. This had been messy, loud, the kind of attention-drawing violence they'd tried to avoid. But they'd survived, and they had their enemies contained. What do we do with them? Isabella asked, finally releasing Sophia. Dominic looked at Torres, considering options. They could kill them all, eliminate witnesses and problems. It would be cleaner, safer, but it would also mark them as the kind of people who left no survivors, which carried its own complications in their world. We make an example, Sophia said, her voice steady despite what she'd endured. Torres lives, but he tells everyone what happens when you come after the Marchetti family. His men, the ones who survive, spread the word. We're not targets anymore. We're the ones you should fear. It was a good call, strategic and sending the right message. Dominic nodded approval. Torres, you're going to carry a message for us. Tell everyone that the Marchetti sisters are not to be touched, that they have my full backing, and that anyone who moves against them moves against me. You understand?" Torres nodded, fear finally showing through his bravado. "Good. My people will release you in a location of our choosing. I suggest you use the opportunity to rethink your career choices. Next time, you won't walk away." They left the shipyard as sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police, inevitable with that much gunfire. But by the time authorities arrived, the location would be empty except for evidence of a gang conflict. Nothing that could be definitively traced any of them. The three of them rode together to a different safe house, none quite willing to separate yet. Sophia sat between Dominic and Isabella, her hands gripping theirs with intensity that spoke to how close they had come to losing each other. "Marcelo's dead," she said finally, breaking the silence. "Torres confirmed it before his men grabbed me. It's over. We won." "At what cost?" Isabella asked quietly. "The necessary cost," Sophia replied. "The only cost that would have let us survive." They arrived at the safe house as dawn broke again, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. A new day in a world they'd fundamentally changed through violence and determination. Inside, they collapsed into exhausted silence, the adrenaline finally fading enough to feel the weight of what they'd done. Dominic watched the sisters. Seeing the way they stayed close to each other, the unspoken communication of two people who'd survived held together. He felt like an outsider to their bond, and part of him wondered if there was really room for him in their world now that the immediate threat was resolved. But then Sophia's hand found his, squeezing gently, and Isabella met his eyes with something like gratitude. They were bound together now. Three people who crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, who'd chosen each other when easier paths were available. "What happens now?" Isabella asked, voicing what they were all thinking. "Now," Sophia said, "we build what we promised. The territories, the partnership, everything we planned, but we do it together, all three of us. No more secrets, no more fighting alone. Together," Dominic agreed, and felt something settle in his chest. This was his family now, as dysfunctional and dangerous as that might be. Isabella smiled, exhausted but genuine. "Together, God help anyone who comes after us." They sat in the safe house as morning light filtered through the windows. Three people who'd found each other through desperation and forged something stronger in fire and blood. The future remained uncertain, their world still dangerous. But for the first time in a long time, none of them faced it alone. And in their world, that was as close to happy endings as anyone could hope for.